Good day. G.E. with a word here. The book of Nehemiah in the Old Testament takes place when the Jews had returned to Jerusalem after many years in captivity. The temple had been rebuilt, but the walls of the city were in terrible shape. In the book, Nehemiah was given permission by Artaxerxes of Persia to go to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls. He faced a lot of opposition. And we're going to look at chapter 2, verses 17 through 20. But I want to remind you that it was Nehemiah in chapter 6, verse 3, who said, I am doing a great work. In chapter 2, the work is ahead for Nehemiah and the people. And Nehemiah is confronting the people with the need. So, what are the elements of doing a great work? Well, let's see. First of all, when it comes to God's great work, there's always a need. I want to read verse 17. And then I said unto them, You see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come, let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach. You see, there's always a need. That's the human condition. There's always needs around us. Maybe personal or family or work or church or community, but there's always a need. Now, needs are often ignored. Some people just can't see them. They're unseen by some people, and they're ignored by others, even if they do see them. There's always somebody going to say, we've never done it like that. And God's people are often too willing to settle in a situation that has needs. They just settle. And when we ignore these needs, that's always a reproach. God's work undone is a reproach, whether it's in the family or church or wherever it may be. Now, are there needs around you? Probably. Okay, let's go on. When it comes to God's great work, second of all, there is usually a visionary. And then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, and also the king's words that he had spoken unto me. And they said, Let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for this good work. When you have a visionary, the visionary is there to sweep away the illusion that everything's okay and should remain the same, because quite often it does not. There are needs, and sometimes things are not okay. And as long as people are lost and hurting, or there's even a small need, there is a great work to be done. And this visionary is there to not only sweep away that illusion that nothing needs to be done, but he's there to muster the force of God. And who is that? That's us. The force is here with us. Let me tell you, you're either a visionary or you're the opposition. Third, when it comes to God's great work, there's always opposition. Let me read verse 19. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian heard it, they laughed us to scorn, and despised us, and said, What is this thing that ye do? Will ye rebel against the king? Now, opposition is always around those who are visionaries, those who see the need. And sometimes that opposition is very close. Often it's close. Could be church people, could be neighbors, leaders, can be your friends or your family. Sometimes that opposition is vicious. In Nehemiah, they laughed and hated and accused him. And there's always somebody, even in our lives, to say, oh, it costs too much, it's too hard, it's not needed, we don't do it that way, we've never done it that way. Now listen, I want you to consider something. If Satan isn't fighting it, maybe God's not in it. Don't you be the person who is always opposing God's great work. And finally, when it comes to God's great work, there should always be a positive response. That's in verse 20. This is Nehemiah speaking. He says, Then I answered them and said unto them, The God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore we, his servants, will arise and build. But you, speaking to these opposition people, ye have no portion, nor right, nor memorial in Jerusalem. You see, the right people The ones who have the positive response are the ones who say, we will do it. With God's help and determination, we will do it. And then I'm going to put the last part of verse 20 in the vernacular. What Nehemiah was saying to these people who were opposing him, he was simply saying, get out of the way. Get out of the way. We're doing God's work, and we're determined to do so. And notice that Nehemiah invokes God, not the king, as his authority. He'd been given the king's permission, but he invoked the power and authority of God. Whatever the need, if it is in God's will, it is God's great work. So let me close this way. Remember that you are either a visionary and part of the force, or you're part of the opposition to God's great work. God has a great work for you. It might be for you as an individual, a job or direction for your family. It might be at your church, or it could be out there somewhere. But God has a great work for you. And remember this, great does not necessarily mean showy or big in the world's eyes. Whatever God calls you to, whatever direction in which he leads you, it is important. The most important work in the world is the one God calls you to perform. May God bless and guide you this day and in those to come.